first order of business I would like to do is have everyone introduce themselves. And I will start with my ranking member to my right. Would you introduce yourself? And we'll just go around the room that way, and then we'll do it with staff.
Henry Helgerson from Wichita, Kansas.
Joe Sywert from Wichita, Pretty Prairie, and Hutchinson.
Jim Minix from Scott City.
John Toplicar, Olathe.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Howe from Salina, Kansas, representing the 71st District.
Lance Neely from Leavenworth and Douglas County.
Pat Proctor, representing the people of Leavenworth and Fort Leavenworth.
Nick Hoheisel, I represent the 97th District, which is all of Southwest Wichita.
I'm Barbara Ballard. I'm from Lawrence, 44th District.
Leo Delperdang. I'm West Wichita, 94th District.
I'm Rich Prail. I represent the 7th District, which is in the southeast corner of the state. Now we'll move on to our folks that are on WebEx to introduce themselves. I can get it moved up here.
Hi, I'm KCO Hobison. State Representative KCO Hobison from Wichita, District 89.
Thank you. Representative Neely. Okay, sorry about that. Representative Hauser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Hauser, District 1, Columbus, Kansas.
Representative Ponkawee Victors.
Hello, everyone. This is Representative Dr. Ponkawee Victors, and I represent the 103rd District of Wichita.
Representative Jacobs.
Good afternoon, Representative Jacobs, 4th District, Bourbon County, Lynn County, and Anderson County.
I would remind you, if you're not going to speak, please turn your mic off. We're getting some feedback. Who else we got out there? Okay, Betty doesn't have a mic. Betty Boaz is our committee assistant, and she's here in the room with us. Thank you, Betty. About our revisers, would they introduce themselves, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hope everyone can hear me all right. My name is Chris Wagner. I'm from the Reviser of Statutes Office. It's been a couple weeks now, so I'm sure you're probably all aware, but we handle bill drafting, bill briefing, and any legal advice that any legislators would need. It's my 5th session in the legislature and 5th session in your committee, so glad to be back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Adam Siebers. I'll be backing up Chris, deal with transportation, also taxation issues. This is my 9th session on transportation.
Thank you. I'd like to go to legislative research. Jill Shelley, please.
Hi, I'm Jill Shelley with the Legislative Research Department. This is my 14th session on transportation. Happy to meet y'all. See you soon. We do backup information, we write subnotes, fulfill information requests.
And your assistant?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee. This is Andrew Finzen, also with the Kansas Legislative Research Department. This is my first legislative session, so go easy on me. I will definitely be backing up Jill as well with anything that we can help you with. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hamey, I think your mic is on. Could you turn it off till we finish? We're getting some feedback.
It was turned off, sir. I'll
Okay.
mute it again.
Thank you. Open the floor to bill introductions. Representative Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Today I would like to introduce a bill that I introduced in 2019 and 2020. And it's essentially the same thing. We didn't get it across the goal line in those 2 years for various reasons. This year the RS is 21 RS 0030, and it would allow the creation of a distinctive license plate for proud educators. This is the exact same iteration it was in those two previous introductions, with the exception of I had the revisor add the lowered threshold for the plate production. And so I would like to respectfully request that be introduced as a committee bill.
Other questions for the, yes, Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Mason. On the lowering of the thresholds, is it the 200 and 500?
Yeah, it went from, essentially we cut the original thresholds in half. So from 500 to 250.
And then from 1,000 to 5, okay.
Yes, and
Okay.
then there was another threshold for continuation from 250 to 125.
Okay. And when I do my bill introduction, you guys will know why that question is relevant. Thank you.
Any further questions? See none, is there objection? Hearing no objections, it's here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your permission, I'll get this to the committee assistant.
Thank you. Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a bill introduction for the committee's entertainment. It is a 21 RS 0087. It establishes the Braden's Hope for Childhood Cancer license plate. And just like my friend Representative Mason, it also includes the reduction of the thresholds.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, is there objection to introducing this? Hearing no objection, it is introduced. Yes, please come to the mic. Thank you. Was your mic on?
Last.
Yeah.
Is it on now? Okay, I'm sorry. I'll start over. I'm Gary Robbins, appearing on behalf of the Folston Law Firm. We're representing a client that is working on model legislation for electric bicycles. This legislation has passed in 28 states. And the group we're representing, our client, is People for Bikes. And the RS number is 70725.
Are there questions? Hearing none, is there objection? Seeing no objection, it is introduced. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there other bill introductions? Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two bills I'd like to introduce. First one is, in the case of both these bills, they were both introduced last year. I know this first one I'm going to talk about actually made it through the House, then we got shut down on the COVID issue. So it's identical to last year, but it's RS 0063, and it has to do with the antique tags for automobiles.
Questions? Hearing none, is there objection? Hearing no objection, the bill is introduced. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second one I also introduced last year, but it was referred to as the move over bill. It's RS 0062. In brief, everybody's familiar if you approach an emergency vehicle with the lights flash and you move over to the other lane if it's available. This does the same thing if you have an individual's vehicle on the side of the road, hazard lights going and people present. Thank you.
Are there questions? Hearing none, is there objection? Hearing no objection, it is introduced. Representative Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not really too familiar with navigating through the computer. I do also have a bill. It's 21 RS 0493. And in respects, it lowers the production rates for distinctive license plates.
Are there questions? Hearing none, is there objection? Hearing no objection, it is introduced. Are there other bill introductions? I have one. It's RS 0606. It's identical to one that we had last year, and it would allow cement mixer trucks and dump trucks to run their tag on the front of the vehicle rather than on the back, because when they're on the back, they get torn up, lost, covered over with cement or whatnot. So are there questions? Hearing none, is there objection? Hearing no objection, the bill is introduced. We'll open the hearing on House Bill 2007. Has to do with motor carrier law and regulation. I would ask Revisor Chris Wagner to brief us on that bill, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Wagner here. House Bill 2007 provides comprehensive changes to the motor carrier laws and certain changes to the KCC's regulation of motor carriers. Current law provides that it's unlawful for a public motor carrier, which is generally defined as any for-hire motor carrier. It's unlawful for any public motor carrier to operate as a carrier of household goods, passengers, or other property in intrastate commerce without first obtaining a certificate. This certificate could either be a certificate of convenience and necessity or certificate of public service. And the KCC currently has the authority to hold administrative hearings to determine whether those carriers should be granted a certificate. And they're required to submit testimony that the carrier is fit, knowledgeable, and able to serve and in compliance with KCC safety regulations. So that was current law. Now, this bill, many of the changes are simply updating and repealing old provisions that no longer apply for licensing or regulation purposes. Federal law has preempted many areas of law, which it's the impetus for some of those changes. The most substantive changes are in sections 8 and 9, starting on page 4. This is the sections dealing with the certificates, and the bill would repeal the provisions related to that KCC administrative hearing, and instead it wouldn't require an administrative hearing, but would now just allow for a hearing if a public motor carrier is denied a certificate. And then that hearing, the bill goes on to say that it's should be heard in accordance with the Kansas Administrative Procedures Act. Then the bill goes on to repeal 4 other statutes dealing with motor carriers signing or transferring their certificates to another carrier. There's another statute disallowing a motor carrier from abandoning or changing their service. without getting consent from the KCC. Another one that's repealed provides procedures for occasional temporary trips for trucks and truck tractors. And then the last one that's repealed deals with regulation of contract motor carriers. So as I said, the bill would strike all of those sections or all of those statutes. The effective date is July 1, 2021, actually. And I would be happy to answer any questions. I should note, Mr. Chairman, this is a repeat bill from last year. So some of you might recognize this bill. It did pass the House 118-0. It's not in an exact form as it passed the House. There's just one minor small change that was added in the Senate committee, which allows motor carriers to opt out of electronic communications from the KCC. So I'll answer any questions you might have.
Questions for the reviser? Representative Delper Dang.
Thank you, Chairman, to the reviser. I was just being new here to this committee, but I'm trying to figure out why would a carrier transfer their certificate to another motor carrier? Can you just give an example, please?
If you don't mind, I might leave that question for Mr. Hamey from the KCC. He would probably be more familiar about those situations than I would.
That's fine. Appreciate it.
Are there any other questions? Am I missing anyone that's on WebEx that is? Don't believe so. Okay, thank you, reviser. Call the first proponent, Mr. Mike Hamey, the KCC Transportation Director. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. As stated, my name is Mike Hamey. I'm the Transportation Director for the KCC. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to brief your committee today on behalf of the staff of the Kansas Corporation Commission. I am here today as a proponent of House Bill 2007. As the reviser indicated, this bill was first introduced last session as House Bill 2524. He pretty much laid out all the changes that were being made. The only amendment was made in the Senate last year, and that was to allow the motor carriers to opt out of the electronic notification and receive their updates through regular mail at their discretion. This is simply a cleanup bill. It changes no current policy. The majority of these laws that we're requesting change on were there prior to deregulation. One thing I would like to add, we have worked with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the Kansas Highway Patrol, and the industry is represented by Kansas Motor Carrier Association, or KMCA, and Mr. Whitaker. Mr. Whitaker wanted me to relay that he is a proponent of House Bill 2007. So with that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. The transfer issue is one of those that we have on the list to strike because it is something we don't allow anymore, to answer that question there. So it's just a dated rule that we're updating, the statute that we're updating. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Mr. Hamey. Does anyone have any questions? I see none. Committee, I have no more proponents, and I have no opponents listed. Does anyone wish to speak as an opponent? Hearing none, does anyone wish to speak as neutral? Hearing none on that, we'll close the hearing on House Bill 2007, and we'll move to an informational briefing by Mr. Tom Whitaker, Executive Director of the Kansas Motor Carriers Association. Welcome to the committee, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me through my mask?
Yes, I can.
Okay, then I'm going to leave it on if that's all right. Just a quick update. First of all, I am Tom Whitaker. I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas Motor Carriers Association. This is my 38th session. The ranking minority member and I go way back from conventions years ago, but and this is the first time in 10 months I've had to put a tie on. So I'm here for testimony in the round today. I do want to give you an update on our truck registration that we do at KMCA. We are a contractor for the Department of Revenue to do commercial truck plates and IRP plates, and those are for interstate carriers. And they have until March 1st to renew. Now, when March came and the state shut down last year, we have not shut down. We have continued to issue plates to the trucking industry all the way through this pandemic. And knock on wood, we have not had a COVID case in our office. We do not allow the public in the building and have not. We go outside, get their paperwork. About the only thing it's cost us is masks and coats for my staff. But it seems to be working, and it's protected my staff as well as those customers that we have. Monday, just for an example, we renewed about 40 new trucking companies to get their new tags. Last week, we transferred about $2 million to the state of Kansas in registration fees. So it is a busy time for us, and I want to thank you for allowing me to take a vacation from being out at the office to be down here at the moment. But today I want to talk about Trucking 101, and some of you have heard this numerous times. Some have never heard it. I'll try to mix it up so it's not too boring, and I'm not going to read everything you saw in the thing on the internet of the testimony. This is your research or reference guide to the industry. But I always want to start with, this industry is made up of a lot of small companies. 98% of all trucking companies operate 25 or fewer trucks. Now, to make that in different perspective, of the trucking companies in Kansas, 46% of the trucking companies operate one truck. Only 0.5% operate more than 100 trucks. And so the UPSs, FedExes, while they operate a lot of trucks, they're a very small part of the industry. You can see in our fast facts that we provide about 70,000 jobs in the state of Kansas, and 49% of the communities represented only get transportation by trucks. So it's important we can continue to be there. In this pandemic, we kept the stores stocked as possible. We kept running. We had many problems nationwide, like Pennsylvania shut down all their rest areas and all their restaurants and places where truckers could go to the bathroom. That lasted 3 days before they realized they weren't going to get any trucks coming through Pennsylvania to deliver the supplies to keep us going. I can't imagine how many truckloads of toilet tissue went out, but a bunch of them did. But our drivers were there. We have asked that our drivers be moved up on the CDC level from 1C to 1B, because they are exposed to a lot of different people. In Kansas, they are in phase 2, which we're very pleased about in getting the vaccines. But we just have to get the vaccines here. Basically, there are 4 types of motor carriers. There's private carriers that haul their own goods. Frito-Lay is a private carrier. Kroger, Dillon's private carrier. Your local plumber is a private carrier. There are for-hire carriers. They can be tow trucks. They can be dump trucks. They can be less than truckload, full truckload, flatbed, all sorts of them on for-hire. They can either be intrastate, meaning they only operate in the state of Kansas, or they can be an interstate carrier. And you can see on my page 2 all the different types of carriers that we represent. Now, about 4 years ago, we had a situation where we went to commercial motor vehicle licensing. And Mr. Chairman, I'm going to back up. That was back in 2012. Had to think for a minute. And we had a problem because all the small landscape groups and contractors all of a sudden had to get DOT numbers. So with the help of the feds and this committee and the Senate committee, we were able to exempt private carriers that operate vehicles 26,000 pounds or less. So the small landscape guy, lawnmower guy, small contractor is not required to get a DOT number, nor are they required to comply with most of the regs. There are 3 safety regs for small private carriers that are required. One is they have to do an annual inspection of their vehicles. 2, they have to secure their load. So you don't have rocks falling out. You don't have lawnmowers falling off the back of the trailer. And the third one was making sure the trailer was properly connected to the vehicle, coupling devices. And that came about because we had 2 rapid incidents where landscape lawn mowing companies, trailers came unhooked, and one of them in Barton County took out a sheriff deputy and his wife on their motorcycle. So those were the 3 things that the legislator decided need to be on there. So if you're a private carrier of more than 26,000 pounds, or you're a motor carrier for hire over 10,001 pounds, you're subject to all the federal regulations. Hours of service, driver qualification, maintenance records, safety equipment, right on down the list. And you are required to have authority to operate, whether it be federal authority. Mr. Chairman, I also might point out the committee and the Senate side this morning requested I give you a glossary of terms. And I have put one together. I will get it to the committee secretary so you'll know when I talk about FMCSA, USDOT, all of these things, what we're talking about. So I will get that glossary to you. Carriers get authority. They pay a uniform carrier registration fee. And some of you might remember the old license plates that used to be on the front of trucks that had all the little squares on them. And you'd have all these little stickers. It's called a bingo card. And you had to file your authority with all the states you operate in. Now you pay one fee to one state and it's distributed. It's called the Uniform Carrier Registration Fee. Registration fee wise, on page 3, you will see that an 80,000 pound truck tractor in Kansas pays $1,870 a year in registration fee. Now, don't mistake what you pay for your car as this fee. Your car is the registration plus your property tax when you do a renewal. This is strictly the registration fee. In 2012, we got rid of the motor carrier property tax and replaced it with a commercial vehicle fee that is paid when you register your vehicle in lieu of property tax. The difference is the old law applied to interstate carriers. It was thought that a carrier from New York would drive through Kansas, they would pay our property tax based on the percentage of miles operated in Kansas. They didn't. They avoided it like they were never here. So we took that fee and rolled it into the International Registration Plan, which every carrier that operates in the United States is part of. So you pay your registration fees paid on your percentage of miles in the different states. Revenue goes through a clearinghouse and back out to the states where it belongs. So a New York carrier not only pays their percentage of our registration fee, they pay a percentage of our commercial vehicle fee as well. So there is no tax avoidance anymore, which is unusual. But there are two types of registrations for trucks. Commercial registrations, that's for trucks that basically operate in the state of Kansas only. And they have a commercial vehicle fee that goes with that. And in the reference materials, there's a list of those fees. And then there's the IRP, which is for international or interstate operation. And as you can see, all the way down at the bottom of page 4, if I operate 50% of my miles in Kansas, I pay 50% of the fee and on down. And in this example, my fee was $1,743.98 on registration. Then we moved to fuel. On page 5, I list the different states' fuel taxes. And if I'm a carrier, just like my registration, I pay every state I operate in fuel tax based on my miles and my average miles per gallon. And that money goes into a base state, and just like a Kansas carrier, comes here and then it's distributed to all the other states I operate in. So everybody gets their fair share from a truck. We have some other taxes. If I run an 80,000-pound truck, I have to pay a federal heavy vehicle use tax annually of $550. I pay $36 per tire in federal excise tax for tires. So that's $648 for an 18-wheeler in tax. And if I buy a new vehicle, a new truck, I pay a 12% federal excise tax on the purchase of that vehicle. So if I paid $150,000, which is not unusual today for a tractor trailer, I pay $18,000 in federal excise tax. That money all goes in to the federal highway fund. So it comes back to the states, and Kansas is roughly gets about 340-some million a year from the feds. The one positive thing in Kansas is, I will tell you, we have one of the best toll roads in the United States. It is one of the most inexpensive per mile. It is kept to a high degree of maintenance, and it costs us $31.30 to go from the eastern terminal to the southern terminal for an 18-wheeler. it is so convenient, is truckers have to follow hours that they can work. And you can make 2 trips a day back and forth from Wichita and still be within the hours. It's a great thing. And Mr. Chairman, I know you serve on the Turnpike Authority. And I want to tell you, the last thing they did by raising the bridges is an incredible economic boost to the state, because we can carry oversized loads on the turnpike. And the way they did it is very unique in construction today. They didn't rebuild the bridges. They jacked them up, built them up underneath, and saved a ton of money. And Turnpike Authority is to be commended for that. But it used to be, if you had a 14-foot tall vehicle, which is legal, you were getting pretty close to the bottom of some of those bridges. And it just takes one to take them off. I remember old carriers used to tell me they used to lower their tire pressure so they could get under the bridges. I never believed that was true, and at $36 a tire and tax, I don't think I'd want to do that, but they did. And there's my advertisement for KTA, and you can take that back to them. We really have worked well together over the years. I will tell you we're about 44% of their revenue and about 16% of their traffic. And they have made an effort to get commercial vehicles on the turnpike in order to continue to generate a good stream of revenue to take care of their 10-year plan. Yeah, 10-year plan. Now let's talk about the size of vehicles. And I'm watching my time, Mr. Chairman, so we don't run too late. On the interstate system in Kansas, you can operate up to 80,000 pounds. 80,000 pounds is a standard 5-axle tractor trailer. You can carry 34 on the 2 sets of tandem each, and the front weighs what it weighs, sometimes between 10.5 and 12. There's your 80,000 pounds. Off the interstate, you can haul 85.5. And we've been trying to get the federal law changed so that we could operate the 85.5 on a better built road. Unfortunately, the East and West Coast don't like to give weight increases, and neither do the railroads. So that has never happened. But 3 years ago, we were able to increase productivity for ag products, and that was to incorporate a 90,000 pound registration. It's, you register your truck for 85.5, pay $200, and you can go to 90,000, but you got to have 6 axles, not 5. So you can spread that load over those 6 axles and not create more wear and tear on our highways. So when you look at a truck and determine the weight is done on the gross weight, the axle weight, and the distance between those axles. They have to take into consideration all 3 things when they load that truck. Now, lengthwise, used to be tractor trailers could only be 65 feet long. And the first year I started with the motor carriers, the federal government said, you're not going to do an overall length anymore. You're going to base it on the trailer length. And they said you cannot set a trailer length less than 48 feet. But then there was a grandfather provision. And In 1982, there was a company out of Great Bend called Continental Can. And they had a 59.5-foot trailer with the narrowest of cab over power units on the front end to be under the 65 feet. So 59.5-foot trailers are grandfathered in Kansas. They made tin cans. So they didn't have much weight. They just needed volume, kind of like Frito-Lay. So you aren't going to see many 59.5-foot trailers. 53 is about the standard that you would see out there. You don't see many cab over trucks. You see what they call the conventional with the long nose, because they're much easier on the driver's comfort. Can you imagine sitting over the steering axle, rolling down the interstate? So power steering, automatic transmission, a lot of changes in the last 38 years since I started. When I started, they didn't even have air conditioning. So a long time ago. But on the safety side, as you know, anything over 26.1 has to have a commercial driver's license. It's a little more difficult to get. It includes the requirement of drug and alcohol testing, pre-employment, random, and post-accident. But there's been a new wrinkle since last year called the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. It used to be that I would come apply to Prel Trucking for a job, and he'd do a pre-employment test, and I'd test positive for marijuana. Well, I'd wait 30 days, go to Helgerson Trucking, and go and apply, and I'd be clean, and I could get a job. Now, that positive test is reported to the federal government by your medical review officer. So, and the trucking company is required to check that before they hire them. It is to stop this, well, I'll just wait 30 days and I'll be clean. You're testing positive and you want to drive a truck, we don't want you in that truck, period. So that we've been asking for years. Carriers and drivers have to register, and they had to register by January 5th of this year. Hopefully, I will tell you, since they started it in September, loading it, there are about 45,000 positive tests that have been reported to this clearinghouse. And with the expansion of recreational marijuana, I'm sure you're going to see more of that, because we're hearing that our carriers, when they bring in a group of drivers that they want to hire, they're losing about 50% of them right off the top. And that is the biggest problem we have as an industry, is finding qualified drivers. But those are just some of the items that we have. There are appendices to this that give you the registration fees, examples of the size and weights, the different types of trucks. But there are two items at the very end, Mr. Chairman, one that I want to talk about. One of them that our industry is very involved in is truckers against trafficking. Every commercial driver in Kansas, before they can renew or get a CDL, has to take training on the awareness of human trafficking. And they learn how to report it, what they see on the roads, in the rest areas, in the truck stops, at the convenience stores, to report it on the hotline. And many instances of taking those people that are involved in human trafficking out of business and in jail are happening because of this particular project. You heard, what was it, a couple of weeks ago in Ohio, 90 people in the human trafficking ring were arrested. Truck drivers were part of the group that identified some of those that were involved. So it's a very important effort. I will tell you that you only have to do the training once. So once you do it with your CDL, you don't have to do it every time you renew, just once. The other thing that we do is we have a road team. They are professional drivers that go out and talk about sharing the road with large trucks, especially to driver's ed kids. Unfortunately, because of COVID, they haven't gone anywhere, and their companies won't let them travel. But the 6 that we currently have a total of about 24 million safe miles. That's a lot of miles. And they will be back at it once we get herd immunity and a few things like that done. And we'll be out there teaching people to watch out for the, what we call the no zones, where the truck driver can't see you. So I wanted to bring those 2 things to your attention. And then lastly, I want you to know that if I operate a commercial vehicle in Kansas or any state in the union, I cannot use a handheld device or text when I'm driving a commercial motor vehicle. That doesn't apply to a lot of folks. This is kind of my editorial comment that you see driving down the road that do not do hands-free. We have a distracted driving problem in this country, and we need to find a way to fix it. I always used to say before they put roundabouts in my neighborhood that I'd come to a 4-way stop and I'd look around at the other 3 cars and I think they were all praying because their heads were down. And that's an old story that I've used before, but it was true, and it's even worse today. Actually, I put my phone back here so it wouldn't go off and I'd have to buy ice cream for the entire group. But with that, Mr. I don't know, is that legal under the current rules in here? But at that point, I'd be happy to stop and answer any questions.
Mr. Whitaker, thank you very much. Are there questions? Representative Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. One question I had, when you blow your, you have a dirty UA when you're trying to get your job, how long do you have to be clean, or how long, what's the waiting period before you can try again?
Tomorrow.
But I thought you said that they have to check. What's that process?
The process is I come in and apply to Francis Trucking. And part of that, I take my UA and goes to the MRO. It takes a couple of days and comes back, well, it's positive for, there's a 7-drug panel that it could be positive for. The MRO will try and talk to the driver and say, are you eating poppy seed muffins? What are you doing? And then the determination comes is if it's a positive or not. At that point, the MRO will notify the carrier that it was a positive and he's disqualified from driving. And the MRO will notify FMCSA, and it, within 24 hours, will go on that report for that driver. So the churning between companies is not going to happen.
Right, and I understand that, and I think it's a great time, but I mean, if they test dirty one time, they can never drive a truck again, or is there a process for them to go through that a year waiting period or a 3-year waiting period?
There are requirements within the regulations that require, if I'm working for you and I test positive, I have to give you referrals to 3 different substance abuse professionals. Don't have to pay for it. Driver has that choice at that point to pick one of them, go get evaluated. If they require treatment, complete the treatment, then he is allowed to return to duty or come back to work. And he is possibly to be random tested twice a month for 6 months to make sure that he's clean, he or she. And be very careful about that. But on pre-employment, there is no referral to an SAP. So the driver would have to take it upon himself to go to an SAP, be evaluated and complete before he would be, the SAP would then report to the clearinghouse that he has cleared that level. Now, if he gets it while he's driving, he loses his CDL for life.
Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to kind of follow up on the representative's questions, is there any process, I guess, due process in getting your name removed from this clearinghouse database? How long does the name remain in there? Are we talking 10, 15 years from now?
First of all, I don't know the answer how long it stays in there. I can find it out, but I don't. But there is a process for a driver to object to what's been put on there. And it's through the federal administrative hearing, starts with your local state director of FMCSA and moves right on up. I don't think it's been tested yet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to follow up on your truckers against trafficking. We talked about Ohio, but we also know that Kansas has had a very high population, I should say, and of human trafficking going on. So does all truckers have to have the training?
All truckers in Kansas, Colorado, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, and Arkansas, and those are the ones I can confirm, and just from all have to have that training. But most states have done it over the years, last few years.
Okay, so we have the trafficking for what to look for, how to report it, and everything else. But do we still have, what do I want to call it, the inspectors out there also looking for the truckers that may be participating in the human trafficking?
Well, yeah, the penalties are very severe if you're transporting somebody involved with human trafficking, period. Those were passed 3 or 4 years ago, and I saw a bill just the other day on the Senate side that deals with human trafficking to tighten it up. But rules apply to truckers, and we do get inspected on the roads. One thing that you may not know is you don't need probable cause to pull over a commercial vehicle. You can just pull them over, do the inspection, and away you go. So, but recently I haven't heard of many in the trucking industry, especially with all this training, that have been involved.
just trying to, I was just verifying, making sure that it was both, because I haven't heard or read, I should say, any more about it, but people were shocked, you know, about 6 years ago when we were so high because of just the border and transferring out, and people were shocked. They said, no, not Kansas, it's some other state, but not us. Well, then we found out, yes, it was us. You know, we were part of it, but I'm glad that we do have these, because then they were getting a bad rap too. They weren't, you know, that they were really the cause of it. Maybe they did some of it, but they're doing a great job in terms of being able to spot it and also help authorities find it.
The Attorney General's office is the center of knowledge here in Kansas on human trafficking. They have led, along with law enforcement, a lot of training for truck stops, convenience stores, hotels, motels, you know, all the places that it can go on. And I know we've had it here in Kansas City. We've had it down in Wichita recently, where the people have been prosecuted for human trafficking, and it's not just girls. It's everybody. And human trafficking can be bringing in illegal aliens, which is in to work as indentured people. That is human trafficking. But it also has the sex trade as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Delberdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a couple questions, and if I can make a comment, I appreciate you bringing up the concerns on the trafficking. I went through training, I think a year ago at the child advocacy centers, and they got into that, but I think it was 2 years ago we passed a statute here specific to the truckers and the training and stuff, so good questions on it. First question I've got is, would you have available a list of the placards, I call them the placards, the hazmat, the oxygen, et cetera, that are on the trucks that we might be able to keep for a reference? Would you have any material there?
I have books, the regulation books for hazardous material. There are 2 of them, and each one of them is that thick.
I'm not looking for that.
I have a how to handle a small pocket guide on how to handle hazardous materials, which has the placards, that I would be happy to share with anybody. Trying to remember. Yeah, I can give them out because it's way under $40. Thinking of the gift limit, so we don't get into you in trouble or me. And but I'd be happy to get some if you kind of let Betty know if you want one, and then I'll get them delivered to her.
Okay, not looking for anything expensive.
No, it's a little hand pocketbook.
Okay.
I kind of, in my car, I have an emergency response guide. What that is, it lists all the UN numbers and NA numbers that you see on the placards on the side of trucks when they're hazardous materials. And it's kind of fun when you're driving down the highway. Honey, look this one up so we can see what we're about to pass. Oh, let's get past this one a lot quicker. But we have the emergency response guides as well. They just reprinted them, and we've sold about 750 of them recently.
So. Second question, if I may. I don't know if this is going anywhere or not, but I keep hearing more and more rumors on electric trucks. What's the feasibility? What do you see in the future? And then if you do see it happening, I'm kind of curious how it's going to work out as far as the road fees, because obviously there's no gas or fuel taxes or anything going to jump in there.
And we had that exact problem in the last transportation plan, where you increased the registration fees on electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. We're going to have to work that out. Nevada's worked out a way where you can tax them based on what the average kilowatt hour would be and charge them an additional registration fee to meet that. Electric trucks are there, and they're coming. Peterbilt, Kenworth, Freightliner, they all have them, and so does Tesla, and I've only seen the prototype and a few of those. Right now, the requirements for environmentally safe electric trucks are mainly in the ports, where there's a lot of container unloading and loading and moving around in the California area. But I would tell you that I believe in 5 to 10 years, you're going to see at least 25% of our fleet 100% electric. I saw today where President Biden said that he was going to turn the federal fleet into an electric EV fleet. That's a lot of vehicles. And it's going to take one heck of an electric motor to move that Cadillac that he gets to go around in, because that thing is heavy. I bet it doesn't meet the actual requirements either.
And then just you had already hit on this pretty extensively, I think, so I almost apologize for asking it, but we keep hearing more and more bills on marijuana, and if or when it becomes legalized, will anything change from the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse or the testing, et cetera? Does it change anything for you in the industry if it does become legal?
Well, we've had numerous states, and there was a bill introduced in this legislature that takes marijuana out of the drugs testing for workers' comp injuries. I want to tell you that if Kansas would change our law, it's still illegal to drive a commercial motor vehicle with that in your system. So if that happens, we need an exemption from that law for people subject to federal motor carrier safety regulations, drug and alcohol testing. Because until the feds change that, it's still going to be illegal. So Nevada just went through that with their legalized marijuana, and they had to go back in their special session and clean up the bill.
The question is right in the back.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Whitaker, thank you for being with us today. Do you have a copy of your presentation today that you could provide to the committee members electronically?
Eddie's already got one.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I did that, but if anybody else that's listening out there or anything would like a copy, just email me at tomw@kmca.org, and I will get them one.
Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got another technology question. This is a question I get from truckers in my district. The future of driverless vehicles, commercial vehicles, are statutes conducive to that, not conducive to that? And what impact do you think it'll have on the trucking industry?
Well, first of all, driverless vehicles aren't legal in Kansas. Right now, that's the rule. We're hoping for some federal guidance on those. This is my own personal thought about this, reading all the trade magazines. Eventually, you're going to see some sort of it, but you're always going to have a driver in that cab. And like when you flip on an airplane, you flip on autopilot, you got to have a pilot right there. They may not be doing what they're doing today, but eventually that's probably going to happen. I mean, we're seeing what Las Vegas now uses driverless shuttles, and Arizona is starting to do that. It's growing. I may not be around by the time we get to that point, but it's coming. Technologies. That's why I have a young staff, so I know what to do. It's kind of like running these WebEx things. I have somebody on my staff that knows how to do that.
We all have to have a lot of help, let me tell you. Representative Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is actually with technology today, this is Representative Jacobs' request. and I don't know whether the entire committee would be interested in it, but Representative Jacobs would like for you to share the website for the trafficking that the truckers must watch so that we can see the training that they're getting.
It is truckersagainsttrafficking.org. I'm even certified. Well, not certified, but I've been trained. Let me put it that way.
Mr. Whitaker, one of the things you briefly, I think maybe got close to it anyway, was platooning. Would you talk about that just a bit?
That's kind of gone away, Mr. Chairman. There is talk. Platooning is when two vehicles get together, two trucks, and the first one is controlling the back one. There's drivers in both trucks, but it saves the airflow around the other trucks and reduces their fuel use. It is being used in some states. I still think that it has merit. It needs tested in Kansas, and I will tell you the KTA is the perfect place to test that.
We had a hearing on it 2 or 3 years ago, and the committee didn't feel like at that point in time that it should be tested. But if I remember correctly, they run the trucks 40 feet apart. And
That is how close they get.
That's pretty amazing. So,
And it's almost instantaneous on braking, everything else. We did have some driver representatives that didn't think it was a good idea, as I remember. Is that a polite way to put it?
I think that's right. Are there further questions? Don't see any. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I want to say that on a little sad note here is that since we do this every 2 years, this is going to be my last time. I'm retiring in October of 2022. I will have been at KMCA for 40 years.
Well, perfect. Congratulations.
So thank you.
Thank you. Committee, we do have one other piece of business. I was remiss, and our committee assistant, Betty, reminded me. We had sent out the committee rules last Friday, and I hope you've had a chance to all take a look at them. But they're basically the same rules that you're going to see in all the committees this year. And does anybody have any comments or that they would like to make at this point in time on the committee rules? See none. Is there objection to approving the rules as presented? Hearing no objection, they are approved. Committee, we will be meeting on Thursday, and we're going to hear House Bill 2014, and Secretary Julie Lorenz of the Department of Transportation will be here also to give us some briefing. So you might be thinking of questions you would like to ask her about the transportation plan or anything you'd like to talk about that has to do with transportation, because she will be here and she plans to be here in person. With that, we are adjourned.